Okay, let's go. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Wednesday, May 26, 2021. The time is 2:44 p.m. This is a special meeting agenda for County Board of Canvassers, which is a role that we as county commissioners play to, I guess it is play, to affirm the election results as presented by our clerk and elections department. Attending are Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Filios. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. One and only business item, canvass of the May 18th, 2021 taxing district election pursuant to Idaho Code 34-1205. Clerk Brannon, take it away, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Filios. And before we start the official canvass, I have to thank my elections team and manager, Asa Gray. They handled all the public questions and issues that arose during the last election. That's a refreshing change from kicking the problem upstairs. This allowed Jennifer and I to focus on the accuracy in the counting of the ballots. Thanks again, elections team and Asa Gray. And with that, Mr. Gray, would you take it away to present our canvass?
Thank you, Clerk Brannon. Yeah, I just want to reiterate what an amazing job that our staff, the elections department, did this time. We, as I'm sure you know, commissioners, we have 4 full-time staff, not counting myself, and between the technological advances that we've had in the last year that have brought us into the 21st century, and just the great staff we have, we only ended up needing to have temporary workers in for just basically the early voting period and just the beginning of canvass through election day, of course, which is just, that is a lot different than we've had in some past elections. And so it's just been really streamlined and really helpful. And I just want to thank my team because they did an amazing job. So getting down to business on the canvas itself, so you should all have a copy of the abstract of the results, which I know is like 15 pages long because of the amount of different things we had on the ballot. And then also just a narrative of an overview of what happened on election day. So I won't go over every single point in the narrative. I know you all have already been here for a while this afternoon, but I'm just going to hit a few highlights in here. On that first page of the narrative, under public notification and turnout, we had 18,875 votes cast this election. It's slightly higher than what we had in our March school election. It's dramatically higher than the 6,175 votes we had in May of 2019. So we almost tripled our number of voters, and our turnout percentage went to an average of 18.6% across the board this time from only 7.5% in 2019. So quite a bit higher. We had a lot more contested races on the ballot this time. I know there was a lot more interest in the library board, the hospital board, and so that I know drove turnout up across the county. Another thing, we had a sizable increase in the absentee vote. Early-in absentee ballots totaled 6,210. I believe in 2019 we mailed out less than 3,000 absentee ballots, and we had well under the early vote count of 1,187 that we had this time. So it was much higher on that. You'll notice that we did have some of our, we did have a few discrepancies on election day. We had 143 ballot types, so we gave, between all the 70 precincts, there were 6 wrong ballots given out. I know I would love that number to be 0, but out of 143, I will take 6 right now. We had precinct 61 that had 6 ballot types, the most in the county. They give out 0 wrong ballots. That, like, our poll workers did an amazing job at giving out the right ballot to the right voter, making sure they were eligible to vote on what they got. So that was just a huge, huge blessing this time. Another thing I want to point out, we did have a couple precincts that had one more ballot that was run through the tabulator than had check-ins. Precinct 8 and 16 had one more ballot cast than check-ins, and Precinct 28 had 2 more ballots cast. We did have blank ballots to match those amounts that were run through the machine, so it's very likely that we just had ballots stick together a couple times when the issuing clerk was pulling them off the pad. I will point out that Precinct 8 voted over 700 voters on Election Day because it is our largest precinct. So they stayed busy, and Precinct 16 had the majority of the Hayden Lake ballot question, which saw sizable turnout. So they were quite busy all day as well. Precinct 28 is also one of our larger precincts. Precinct 30 had one more ballot cast than check-ins. We didn't have any blank ballots in the tabulated for that precinct, so it's very possible, again, that two stuck together and that potentially either someone voted both of those or that there was a voter who was not fully checked in the poll book.
Do you think is the more likely?
I think honestly, it's probably more likely that the two ballots stuck together. We are still going over that one, and we're gonna double check everything on that, but I didn't see any specific reason to think that someone wouldn't have been checked in the poll book.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's probably the more likely scenario.
So one ballot out of 18,000 something, did not negative affect any race? We didn't have any ties this time?
No ties. The closest thing was the Alpine Water and Sewer District race, which there were no issues with balloting in that race, and that was a 3-vote margin, 15-12.
Wow.
But everything else was not even close comparatively to 2019 when we had a coin toss for Kootenai Water #1.
Sure.
So.
Okay, so a note to voters out there, every vote counts in Kootenai County.
Yes, exactly. So like I mentioned, the 6 instances of the wrong ballots being given. We did have 478 people that registered either during early voting or Election Day. Again, 97% of those had 0 voter registration errors. Any errors that occur on registration is typically someone just forgot to fill something out and we have to correspond with them. Or we did have a couple precincts that a couple people who were updating address, they updated them in the poll book and they didn't necessarily fill out the physical card. So again, we still have to correspond with them to try to get the physical card. We have the information in that case. We just want it on the actual card. Other than that, those were the biggest things. The unusual factors this election, I mentioned the Post Falls school levy. Normally Post Falls is one of our more depressed areas for turnout. We normally see lower turnout in Post Falls City in that area. That was not the case this time with the school levy and the fire bond on the ballot. We had very much heightened turnout in the Post Falls precincts. And also in the city of Hayden Lake with their budget increase question on the ballot. That was, we had plenty of ballots at every precinct, but we took more ballots out to Hayden Lake because thanks to the e-poll books, we can monitor how much of the specific ballot type they have used and have left. And so we could see that Hayden Lake was going to run out before the end of the day. So we were able to take them more ballots mid-afternoon so that no one ran out. No voters had to wait or anything like that.
So where did those ballots come from? Did you print them?
We printed them on demand like we used for early voting, yes. Yes, so that, again, a huge thanks to the technology that we were able to get last year, thanks to you guys and the COVID financing, to get the ballot on demand for early voting, which allows us to also have that as a backup for Election Day should we need that.
I just want to add, we account for every blank sheet we have
Yes.
in-house every day and everything we print out.
And we no longer have a big bunch of ballots that were ordered to make sure we had enough, and we don't have any overage or waste.
So do you just shred those? I mean, that's just,
By law, we have to retain unused ballots and voted ballots for, there's different periods of time, and then that's part of when we bring you a resolution for classification and destruction.
destruction of records.
Those are some of the records that are on there, yes.
Awesome.
So,
Okay.
yes. Outside of that, everything else pretty much went smoothly. I do want to address, we did have several precincts where there were people handing out flyers or with signs outside the precinct. I actually drove out to one that was not far from our office myself on Election Day to make sure the gentleman who was handing out sample ballots was more than 100 feet away from the building, which he was. We had a couple precincts where our judges had to ask the person to move to the 100-foot line and showed them where it was. We did have several phone calls on Election Day, and even in the aftermath, we've had some phone calls and emails from people saying, hey, these were handed out at my precinct. Yes, they were over 100 feet away from the building. We have checked that, and we had our judges were very diligent on checking that as well. So I know that's something that has been talked about some, and we are aware.
I do have just a couple of things
Sure.
to add. When Leslie said every vote counts in Kootenai County, those votes that are received in a timely fashion with signature matches are counted. For this election, we had 110 late received ballots after the 8 p.m. deadline and 22 signature mismatch. And 135 total were not valid.
We're not valid, okay. And I guess the paper had reported that there were over 400 ballots that were mismarked or something that were spit out, is that correct? Where it said vote for 3 and they voted for
Yeah, there were a lot of overvotes.
overvotes, okay.
I mean, it's like vote for 1 and they voted for 2, or vote for 3 and they liked everybody. They wanted to make sure that we had good representation.
The important thing to state on that, though, so there's people that are going to look at that ballot when it gets spit out to the top to make sure, was there voter intent? If there was intent and you can clearly, it's indicated, we're going to
Establish that.
duplicate it with 3-member board.
Three.
That ballot goes back into the machines, and if it was an overvote, the other races that were not overvoted are counted.
Yeah.
And because, again, of not having to deal with the 100-foot line and some of that matter, I ran every voter intent. That was part of what I did. And I worked the duplication board. So if somebody marked it with an X, the machine will not read it.
Right.
But that's obvious, that person wanted to vote for, say, Katie Brody. I mean, and you have to circle it, but an X won't count. So I did that all night. It was fun. And there is one other factor, and it is not really related to this canvas, but it is almost, so I think you should be aware of it. There has been a challenge of one of the registrations for a person who was elected. What will happen at this point in time? I have sent a letter asking for verification of residence. I received information from that person on the challenge. It is now, I have 2 options. I can verify it, or I can call a hearing. I am trying to set up a hearing at this time.
Okay.
All the clerk will do is, if we find the person does not reside in this area, we will just simply cancel the voter registration. We have no further authority than that. Any prosecution of that person, because if you knowingly falsify, it's subject to a $50,000 fine. If you knowingly falsify your voter registration, that's not my purview. I just have to make the determination if the intent was to fill out information.
So when you
That was
say
not correct.
cancel the registration,
I mean, that
Go ahead.
person has not proven to the county clerk, I'm not saying this is the case, but if that person has not proven to the county clerk, a hearing is called, and then I will either make the determination that they are registered correctly
Or not.
or not. If they are not, my authority stops with canceling the registration. Any prosecution would have to be done by,
but if you
Prosecutor.
cancel the registration, what happens to the vote?
what happens to the voter?
Well, no, to the vote, to that individual's election.
Well,
Does the
it
court,
actually, if I go into too much more detail, I'm going to be letting the person who's been
all
challenged
right, forget it.
out of the bag. And
Right.
I have to say it will be But generally speaking, it is up to the board to appoint a representative if the person is found to be
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's
illegal.
what I was getting at.
But I can't really go much further. But I want you to be aware of that, even though it doesn't directly affect our canvas, the elections may be in the newspaper again.
I hear you. Okay, fair enough. And I am familiar with it, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay. Interesting. And it deals with the issue of primary residence.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Jim, for staff, for Jennifer, for Asa?
I question like every year, so there was no monkey business.
No, sir, there was not. We, in fact, on election night, anytime that anything with the count for a precinct even looked like it might be, oh, hey, is there a discrepancy here? Clerk Brandon had us rerun that precinct on election night, and then in every case, it matched, the tabulator matched again, and we were able to then go to the e-poll books the next day or whatever and see, oh, this check-in was spoiled, or this check-in this way, and, you know, to line up our numbers.
I think you all did an outstanding job.
Thank you, Bill. And Commissioner Brooks came to the canvas this time and, or came to the
Logic and
logic
accuracy.
and accuracy test. And he actually said he had fun, so Asa's been, he's
You
been
can't
great.
afford that, Bill. You're not supposed to have any fun in this job.
That's right.
Well, that's because none of you guys have ever worked elections before.
Good point.
We have a lot of
I don't
fun.
need that much fun, thanks.
We have a lot of fun, and I think it's because we're all crazy.
You make the best of it. Good
But
point.
we take it seriously.
Oh, I know you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So with
Okay, then.
that, that's it from us.
No further questions. I'll open it up to public comment. Hearing none. 3 PM, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Don't adjourn, don't.
Yeah, we do. We have to
Okay.
affirm. Go right ahead.
I move that we approve and affirm the canvass of the May 18th, 2021 taxing district election.
I second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and the canvass of the May 18th, 2021 taxing district election is hereby affirmed by the Kootenai County Board of Canvassers. Thank you.